Trust your process. Dream it. Defer. You are now tuned in. Breathe. Get up. Trust your process. Dream it. Defer. You are now tuned in. Breathe. Get up. Trust your process. Dream it. Defer. Wake up.
Wake up. What's up? It's your girl Dutchi checking in. Happy Wednesday. Happy birthday, Dad. Happy birthday to the other Virgos out there. You guys are some amazingly interesting people, to say the least. Charismatic, very great with your hands. Homemakers, perfectionists. Moody little mofos. So anyways, happy birthday, Dad, and to all the other Virgos that I tend to love for some odd reason with your attractive selves. But y'all special though. Don't carry all the world on your shoulders today. Take some time and breathe. Don't let the depression sit on you heavy, and just know there's always an out. Everything is temporary. All right. So anyways, it's your girl Dutchi. Welcome to Dream Deferred Pod. Haven't really done this in a while. Working on just getting everything back to a level of excellence and just to open up the opportunities and everything. Been growing so much personally, and from my readings and things today and where I'm at, I thought it was very important to go ahead and do this episode for you guys. Hopefully, you messing with it. So this is episode 36. Sis, you're totally enough. All right. So, inspired to do this because I do and have mentioned several times that I have anxiety, and it's like, I think I've had it since I was a kid because I'm like a kind of an oddball, and I've always been that way, but it's not the only thing about me, that defines me. The most important thing is to know that, it's all okay. It's all totally normal. And so I wanted to talk about being enough because oftentimes I, struggle with feeling like I'm enough. I read about comparing today, and it was like, one of the things was like, stop comparing yourself. It was like, do this and take some of this comparison out of it. And it was like, wow, that just really spoke to me on the strength of, when we keep looking and seeing what other people are doing, like we can never be happy with what we got going on. And so I think that's totally important. And I think it's just key to trying to live this life that you want to be, where you want to be constantly in a state of peace. And I think, that of course is going to be on a spectrum. And then I think that of course there are going to be things that come in and out of your life that rock that. But overall, you want to keep this, internal locus of control. And from that point, then you can find joy in I think stabilizing and having your peace and accepting yourself and believing you're enough and owning that and walking in that. Then you can, I think, combat or really not allow anxiety to be something that totally defines you, that forces you to act in a certain way or make bad decisions. So it's like, how do we even define ourselves? You know what I'm saying? Like, that's the first thing. It's like, what, like, do we define ourselves by what we do or like what we value, what's important to Dutchi? Like, how do we define that? Like, how do we define ourselves? And it's easy sometimes to say, well, I am this. I'm a woman. I'm a lesbian. I'm a Christian or spiritual person. I'm half Jamaican. I'm British. I'm American. I'm a soldier. I'm an educator. I'm an entertainer. I'm an aspiring filmmaker. I'm a dancer. I'm a musician. Right? I can just go on and on about these things talk about what I do, but they don't really speak to who I am. And so speaking to who you are, it's like we have to uncover that. Like, what are the things that I value? What am I passionate about? What is my purpose? And I think when you look at what you value and what's important to you, then that shapes and lets you know what's your purpose here in life. And the purpose is, of course, like what you do. But then you step back from like your passion is like how you do those things. But then you step back, like what I value and find important is why. It's like, what do I believe? And I wrote a couple things down earlier, but I thought about it and it was like, after my reading, it was like, what's important? Not like who are you? It's not defined by like what you do, but like what do you find to be important? it's important for me. Family is important for me. Building relationships, keeping and maintaining those relationships, connecting people, networking, entertaining people, making people laugh, educating people, developing people to be their best selves, building financial wealth, health, and overall wellness. Those are things that matter to me and are very important to me. So all those things shape how I do things and where I come from with the work that I do, because I want the work that I do to speak to the things that I value and be an extension of that. So I, yeah, that's like what's important to me. And so I define myself based on those things, and you have to judge and evaluate yourself, I think, on those, or based on, okay, what am I doing and how does it relate to those things that I value and what I find to be important? And then it's like, well, am I enough though? Right. And oftentimes that we try to measure that from what we're doing, these achievements, like we're trying to do more in order to feel like more. And it's like, why do we consistently want to be more, be better? And it's like, why are we not loving ourselves at the place we're at right now? Like, I'm totally enough, and just doing it. And so it's like, from that, it's like, well, then this creates this constant state of anxiety and anxiousness where you're seeking perfection through achievement and those kind of things defining you. So that means that when you're not successful, which if you base it on what you achieve, then it's like you have nothing, because that's how you have created your identity. Man, I can't read avoidance. You know what I'm saying? Then we like avoid reality, avoid our real feelings, avoid being accountable, avoid being responsible for our actions. We may self-medicate, you know what I'm saying? Like turn it to alcohol, drugs, numbing behaviors. Some people do it through eating. And all of this is just self-harmful. You know what I mean? Like you just harming yourself, and some of that comes into play, like bad self-talk. It's not always an action per se to yourself as far as like something physical, but it may be some emotional, mental, psychological harm that you're doing to yourself. Like sometimes we foster codependency, where we start looking to other people for love and acceptance and this fulfillment that we should just be giving to ourselves. And it's like so easy, I think, to get wrapped into that. It's so easy to look to social media to see, like, I posted this today. Did I get this many likes? Why haven't I gotten this many likes yet? Why haven't this many people seen it? What's the reach? And it's like we're judging ourselves and forcing ourselves to become part of this algorithm. And I'm not saying this as if I don't do it. I'm saying as like me just being for real. Like, it's a thing you're doing, but it's like it's hard because so much is also tied to it, as far as like sometimes your success and these achievements and doing some of the things you love come down to looking at this measurement and these tools. But I think we have to be very mindful and put some boundaries and parameters in self and go back to, how do I define myself? And these things don't define me, right? And so it's like, this is a skill or a tool. This is something I can use to maybe measure a type of success or a type of achievement. But these things don't measure and speak to who I am, right? So forget the algorithm and like forget the likes to a degree. I think if it's purposeful and there's an intention behind it, like go forward, do your best at it. But at the end of the day, like, sis, you still got to do you, bro. You still got to do you. So I thought about like, how have I been abused, right? And I think we all go through things like have been bullied before, have been talked crazy to, haven't been picked, have been rejected, have been seeking this attention and maybe not gotten it from our parents or our loved ones. And then using that to, like, that kind of sometimes chisels out our worth or how we view ourselves and our identity. And, over time, then you kind of take those things or those experiences that you've learned, those behaviors you've learned, and you apply it to yourself and abuse yourself from that point. And it's just basically like, we cannot do that. We can't sit here and apply abuse to ourselves. Because then what happens is like that's how we now have shaped ourselves and define ourselves based on abuse or things that have taken place. And then we do it further to ourselves. So we're further learning this behavior. We reiterate it to our minds and our psyche. And then a lot of times we take those learned behaviors and apply that abuse to other people. Or and not in a say like, oh, I was bullied, I'm going to pick on someone. Sometimes it is like that. But I think a lot of times it's a matter of we allow people to treat us a certain way based on how we've been treated and how we treat ourselves. So in order for you to change how people treat you, like, you have to change how you treat yourself first. You have to change that self-talk. You have to change that identity and how you define that. And we, you know, I think we unlearn this by like really taking time to establish those boundaries. And it's very hard. I know it's been very hard for me to do it because a lot of times it's like, yo, I don't want to be alone. I don't want, you know, since I do care about relationships and people, then I may define my self-worth based on that and wanting to, you know, do whatever else. Excuse me. So like wanting to do something different, and it can be like very painful. You know what I'm saying? It's more painful than removing that Band-Aid. It's like basically like removing a stake out of your heart and stop thinking that someone's supposed to come in and save you and remove this big toothpick or this driftwood, you know, that you might have put there, or something you fell into put there, and not realizing that you have all the vitamin E, you have all the peroxide you need, you have all the Neosporin that you need to clean up this wound and heal yourself. Like you got to apply your own pressure, and you got to like stop the bleeding by yourself first, because it's not for someone else to do. It's not their responsibility. You know, so like, what am I doing about it these days? Like, how do I resolve, you know, this constant state of, or this tendency to fall into this trap of anxiety and not letting it define me and all that. What am I doing about it? I'm reading, I'm journaling, I'm praying, I'm listening to some of the right things. I'm trying to watch myself talk, like the things I say to myself, because what you say to yourself, like, is probably the biggest thing. And then, like, you know, it's like if we're not filling our mind or reading the right things or listening to the right things at the right time, then we're so likely to come from those places. You know, I'm sorry, I'm kind of looking at like these notes I have on my computer. Because some of them are like good self-talk. So that's another thing. Like I have something on here that says, I am unique, special, and valuable. You know, paralyze resistance with persistence. Think about what you are thinking about, and you cannot be passive with your thoughts. Silence is powerful. Flaws are negative. Flaws are areas and opportunities for growth. Create space for self-improvement. Learn something new every single day. So these are just like examples of different things that I have in front of me that I'm like I'm constantly reading every day. You know, was reading "You Are a Badass with Money," and she talks about, Jen Sincero talks about, you know, you have to even say statements to yourself as far as financial. So I mentioned wanting to have financial wealth, and that's something important to me because I care about my family and I care about the impression I leave on the world and the work I'm able to do. So you do need money to make that happen. So she's like, I will make, right? And so I still have that blank. Like, I need to know what that dollar amount is. But the rest of it says, I will work with positive, uplifting, gifted, selfless, spiritual, and maybe the word isn't selfish, right? Selfless. I think that, like, now at this point, I would change that. But so let's start over. I will work with positive, uplifting, gifted, spiritual, grounded, well-rounded, fun, authentic, creative professionals. Each day I will wear what I want, but primarily a collared shirt or layers with jeans or chinos, with shoes of my choosing, whether it be sneakers, boots, loafers, etc. I will feel empowered, needed, valued, trusted, independent, team member, and free. I will also feel supported and purposeful. And this will be, well, I will see and be in my environment. There'll be, I guess, perks. Like the perks of this space will be also have field trips, flexible time, travel, and great snacks. So these are some of the things that if I was creating this ideal space, like I have to define what that is. So it's like going back to the first thing I asked is like, how do we define ourselves? How do I define me? And, make that happen. So anyways, that was that. And it's like, I think the more you lean into that and think about that and create this, that's what you're going to become. But the more you look at, I'm not this, my work sucks, I'm not going to be good enough, I'm constantly competing against I don't know who, comparing yourself to other people, then that's what your life is going to consist of. And so, I got into the place of self-help by just like going through some crazy stuff, being rejected. I mean, I think it forces you to have to choose which path you're going to walk in from it next. You get to this fork in the road and you've got to decide like, okay, what am I going to do next? and where am I going to go, and what is it I really want to happen at the end point. I know what can happen if I choose like self-destruction and self-harm, but like, what is it going to look like if I choose to accept myself and embrace this ugly and embrace these tears and these fears? What does that look like? And half the time it's just like we don't know, because, and that's the scary part. And so then